I've been playing around in my head the idea of doing like an actual game design class. And for today's critical thought, I want to kind of begin my kind of discussion on this, with discussing what does it mean to actually study and examine game design, and how this can improve your own skills at understanding gameplay, whether you are a developer, enthusiast, or student. Today's video is probably going to be on the shorter side, simply because this is a topic that we can either spend a very long time on or a very short time, depending upon what specifics I want to focus on. And if you have any specifics you'd like me to talk about in a future video or a part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, let me know in the comments. But studying game design is still something that, despite starting Game Wisdom back in 2012 and the video channel I think it was back in 2016, it's still something that I don't think is really understood or grasped at the level that I think it should be at this point. In one of my presentations, I talk about the idea of, is there a role for somebody who is a pure designer, as in somebody with no programming, no art skills, working on a game? And some of you will, of course, jokingly say that I'm just talking about the idea guy. But being able to understand and properly convey gameplay systems and mechanics is an important talent in of itself, and it is something that is separate from programming and art. You can be the best damn programmer in the world, but if you can't create compelling gameplay, it doesn't matter if your game is bug-free. Likewise, while art will certainly pull people into checking out your game, poor gameplay systems and design will get them to refund it just as fast. So, when we talk about studying and understanding game design, there are several key aspects that I've learned and grown with over the last decade. And it is something that is very specialized, that once you start doing it, it becomes very difficult to turn it off. But one of the key aspects is being able to examine systems at their most basic and foundational level. This is when we talk a lot about the UI and the UX of a game. And it's also why I harp on it so much with plenty of the games that I play today. Because at the end of the day, if your UI UX is bad, everything else in your game doesn't matter. Doesn't matter the story you're trying to tell, the gameplay systems you're trying to build. If people cannot enjoy your game simply by picking up a gamepad or typing on a keyboard or using a mouse, nothing else really matters to it. But to understand and study gameplay, there are several key aspects that I tend to look at. The first, as I just said, is the UI and the UX. How does it feel in my hands? This is why for a lot of games, I can tell very quickly in my play whether or not this game even has a remote chance of succeeding. Because if I am, going like this while I'm trying to use a gamepad, or I'm just like trying to figure out how I'm supposed to hold this controller in order to use it, then I'm not going to be able to enjoy anything else about your game. And the more that we've seen, I think over the past 5 years specifically, especially with how more indie developers have become transparent with their designs, is the idea that you cannot ignore the UI UX of a game anymore. And the excuse that you are a solo developer or a 5-person team or this is your first game, it doesn't hold weight anymore in today's market. Because we have seen some amazing games come from smaller teams, just as we've seen some horrible games. And the same could be said from, teams in the dozens, if not hundreds. And this is why when it comes to studying game design, and again, specifically game design, we're not talking about story, lore, getting ideas from other industries. We're talking purely from a mechanical and system standpoint. You have to play a lot of games. And some of you will immediately take that as saying, well, then that means that esports players and speedrunners and people just spend all day long playing video games are the best designers, right? No. There is a different mindset when it comes to studying design than it is just playing a game from either a professional standpoint or just playing it for fun or on a stream and being wacky and yelling about how the game cheats you. Understanding how the systems of a game work really comes with not only playing a lot of games, but being able to understand the following points. What was the developer's intention? What did this game do right? What did this game do wrong? And who does this game appeal to? And that last point is something that I think is lost on a lot of people, especially a lot of people who review video games. It's also why I say that these days I don't consider myself a game journalist, because it's not my job to tell you, how bombastic this game is. It's my job to tell you, did this game design succeed in its goals? And if it succeeds in its goals, then that means there is always a fan base for it. Even if we're talking about a 10 out of 10 game or a 2 out of 10 game on Steam or Metacritic. And it's one of those very hard things to grasp, that there is a difference between saying, I hate this game because it's a stupid game and the developers were lazy and no one should play and blah blah blah, and I hate this game, but I hate it because of X, Y, and Z, and if you enjoy X, Y, and Z, then you're going to enjoy this game. And this is where you start to really pick up some of the finer points of studying game design. That you can play a game that you hate and despise, and you never want to touch it again, but you can still explain why it is a good game for somebody else. And a big case in point for me are survival games. I don't like Don't Starve, Valheim, 7 Days to Die, Rust, Subnautica, any of these survival game mainstays. I just do not like those games. The gameplay loop doesn't work for me. But I can still examine these games and understand that these elements that I don't like, you may like them. I hate durability systems and having to craft a lot of survival stuff in games. But I know quite a few of you certainly enjoy that. And somebody tried to call me out and say, well, if you don't play 7 Days to Die or you don't play Valheim, how can you study or talk about it? And the answer is simple. I can study its systems. I know the gameplay loop of Valheim, of Subnautica, and so on. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean that I don't understand it. And I have played a lot of games that I respect for their design, despite the fact that I hate to play them, that they just don't work for me. And here is the challenge, and this is how you can start building up your own design, whether you are, again, a student or even a teacher who's looking for an assignment. So for the class here, get ready, pick up your pencils or pens these days. I get to sound even more older than I normally do. The challenge is very simple. I want you to pick a game that you really love. Your 10 out of 10, your Game of the Year winner you could pick for 2021, or even if you found one for 2022 already. And I want you to explain to me in a few paragraphs what that game does wrong. Why would somebody not want to play this game that you love so much? And then I want you to do it for the opposite. For a game that you hate, a game that no matter if you get it for free, if it's, on Games Pass, if somebody's literally going to pay you to play it, that you refuse. I want you to explain to me, what does this game do right? Why would somebody want to play this game even though you hate it? And if you want to get some extra credits, put in the comments down below. And the reason why I say this is that being able to understand a game at the systems level, of ignoring the aesthetics, ignoring anything that would get in the way of that, is the first step in terms of understanding design. That you can put your own opinions and sentiment aside and be able to examine what this game does right and wrong is going to help you out in terms of being able to understand systems going forward. Because even in the worst games, even in the games that are legitimately bad, that they are rated 1 out of 10s, completely negative down the line, there's still probably something worth studying. Whether it's what the developer did from a mechanics standpoint, what they did with a unique system, And even if it doesn't work, that doesn't mean that that system is, the pariah, that is forbidden and should never be used. Because one of the things that I say a lot is that there's a difference between a niche genre and a niche design. And in a lot of cases, the games that oftentimes fail when they think too far outside the box is because they simply did not get it right in terms of the application or the implementation of a certain system. And there is always something that you can learn. And this is why when it comes to studying design, you want to play a lot of games. And again, you want to study a lot of games. I should clarify that. And if you are a developer wanting to work on a specific genre, that means studying all examples of it. The good, the bad, and everything in between. Because if you only play the good games, you're not going to notice the design traps that caught other developers, and you may fall into it yourself. And if you only play the bad games, then that means you're not going to see what is the popular example on the market today. Because you see, this is one of the scary truths about what it means to make a game today. Even though you are not directly competing with other games, the consumer's expectations are going to always be weighed with that best example. Why should I play your 2D, very emotionally driven platformer when I have Celeste and Ori and Mario and even stuff like Super Meat Boy? Why should I play your deck builder when I have Slay the Spire? And again, we could pick this for every genre under the sun. But to begin to wrap things up for the video today, for this very first step in terms of understanding and studying design, you have to be able to grasp why certain aspects of a game will either attract people or repel them, even in the very best games. And there is no game that is immune to this. And this is why I say there's no such thing as the perfect video game. There will always be elements that can be construed as pain points, whether they are small, huge, or somewhere in between. For somebody, that pain point may be something that's just easily glossed over. Who cares? For somebody else, it could stop them from playing the game within 45 seconds of loading it up. Even something as innocuous as not being able to skip the game company logos at the start could be enough to get somebody to stop playing. And if you don't study these examples, you're going to mess up with these points. And again, once you start looking at games at this level, looking at how the systems interact with each other, what is compelling about this game, it becomes very hard to turn this off. I know I certainly can't. And it's why when I play a lot of games, sometimes I'm just, staring and just like thinking to myself about how this game works. Which, of course, makes it very hard to talk when you're trying to play some of the more complicated games. But it is a skill that once you start developing it, it becomes very useful. In the game industry, of course. I don't know if studying game systems will help you as a doctor, but who knows? Maybe somebody will be able to illuminate me on that point. So, thank you so much for watching this video. As always, do the liking, subscribing, commenting now the YouTube algorithm wants. And again, let me know what you think in terms of studying game design, and do that homework that I told you to do earlier in this video. And again, if you have any suggestions for topics not just related to game design specifically, that you'd like me to cover in future Critical Thoughts, let me know. Check out our Discord and Patreon link down below, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. And until next time, take care.